Mr. Robertson.
Better be a good camera.
It's a pretty good camera. So I came into Montana and I heard about the government trying to railroad you. It sounds like we're dealing with some pretty corrupt stuff. So you got convicted of having a pond? Is that what happened?
Of building a pond, yes. Constructing a pond with a 310 permit from Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks.
Which you actually had permission from your state to construct a pond.
Yes. And I've built many ponds over the years.
And so the federal government comes in, notwithstanding the fact that you shouldn't really have to have a permit from your state, but you even played along with their rules. The federal government comes in and they said you couldn't have the pond?
Well, it's a little more complex than that. We've written a lot of letters because of Forest Service not doing their job.
Right.
And aiding and abetting a federal felon and an arson. And they kept him on the job because they need fires out there to justify their job, evidently.
So here they are on their land that the Constitution doesn't grant them authority to occupy in the first place, illegally occupying that land. And then they come to you and they just didn't like you, or they didn't like where you put your pond, or long story short, they said this pond's illegal.
Well, it's a little vendetta because Jackie Fisher, she's special agent in Butte, Montana, and she was given evidence that this federal felon was forging wildland firefighting certificates. My wife, Carrie's had a wildland firefighting truck for over a decade. And when we go out to these fires, we like to be safe.
Sure.
But this federal felon also had a fire truck, several of them, and he would come out there on the fires, and if you didn't help him steal equipment, like he did on a Lincoln fire, a couple was on their fire truck, like sharing a fire truck, like wife and I, and this Mr. Betka says, well, help me steal some of these pumps. And they said, no, we're not going to help you do that. You know, it's stupid. So a short time later, they found some stolen equipment on their fire truck. So they took it to security. And so security went down, and there at the Three Bears Motel in Lincoln, they found a whole motel full of stolen equipment.
Right.
But it was Forest Service law enforcement, so they just asked him to leave. He got demobbed off the fire.
Right, because he was one of their own. So the long story short is you tread on toes.
Make a long story short, they couldn't, Forest Service couldn't do anything with us. They did come on, spend probably $50,000, surveyed our property and found that our barn was a couple of feet on our unpatented mining claim.
Right.
So they tried to charge us with that, and the judge just laughed at them and threw it all out there in Butte. So they brought, here just a couple of years ago, they brought in the EPA. Well, the EPA, of course, they can pollute Animas River in Colorado. That's
right.
Okay.
Right.
Millions of dollars. So they came on, Jackie Fisher brought them onto our property, and they found that in 2013 we did enlarge the pond because we had another fire right below our property. And evidently the same federal felon was suspected anyhow of doing it. So somebody moved in with a little bit of guts, and they did take his volunteer fire service away from him. So I did go ahead and I enlarged the pond. It's a huge pond. It's 50 feet wide by a whole 100 feet long. You know, it's just huge. But we do need that. We still got our fire truck. We got neighbors that
So this is a pond to help you fight the fires.
It is. And like I say, we had a DNRC permit for groundwater. It's a groundwater pond.
Right.
It's not in a creek.
So in every sense, you're lawful, but they took you to a federal court and they charged you. And did you get a trial by jury?
Well, the first trial ended in a hung jury. Had a couple old hard-headed people in it, probably a couple of vets, but they weren't going to reach verdict, so they threw it out. Sat there. It was exactly a week after the first trial. We went in, and it wasn't much of a conversation, so we left and went home early, about 4:30 in the afternoon, and we seen a SUV parked outside our locked gate. So Carrie, we called dispatch trying to find out who it was, but Carrie looked inside the SUV and she seen this, what was it, Marston or Seiler? That's a two.
Seiler had a Kelly Seiler box.
Yeah, two EP agents, EPA special agents, Marston and Seiler. So that was one of the vehicles. So we figured, well, they're walking down the canyon, documenting the huge flow of water that isn't there.
Right.
But they like to say it is. Enough water to carry suspended solids for a mile down the Cataract Creek. And then about 120 miles down the Jefferson River, where is the only navigable waters. But they have control over that, evidently. They don't want dredge materials in that.
Right.
So it's sort of a sea story is what it really is. It's just, But
So in the end-
Carrie went down, she drove around with a four-wheeler and said, Joe's on his way down, but what I thought I'd do, I'd just sit there and wait by that SUV. They had brought two out, parked one at the bottom of a mile away from our ponds, and we caught them up there. What they were doing, they drained our pond. They put
On your private property.
holes, yeah.
Yeah.
They trespassed behind the lock gate with signs all over saying that, private property, keep out. And so here after Carrie said I was on my way down, they took off, jumped in that other SUV and drove up 50 miles an hour on a dirt road. And there I was sitting at the gate waiting for them. And their mouth dropped open. It looked like a deer in the headlights. They knew they were caught. I told them to get their little fat butt out, close the gate behind them, which they did. They left. And I told Judge Malloy a couple of days later in an ex parte meeting before the next trial coming up, I told the judge, Malloy in Missoula, what they had done. And he says, I don't see what that has to do with this case. So
The fact that they broke the law was irrelevant.
that was okay.
Yeah, the fact that all that was relevant was the fact that they were accused. So in the end, they take you to second trial now.
Second trial.
And this time they get a jury that'll convict you. They make sure they can.
I was supposed to have some input on the jury selection, but that's BS.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
You get the jury the judge and the prosecution
Because
wants.
there was three of them with contacts to Forest Service, and I didn't want them in there. But guess what? You can pet her. You just go ahead and pet that puppy.
You can pet the puppy.
You betcha. Anyhow, the jury selection for a guy being prosecuted is nothing but BS.
Right.
It just don't happen. But anyhow, I brought my dog in. Judge Malloy says, what's with the dog? Like it's a man killer or something. And Carrie had the little thing from my psychiatrist out at Fort Harrison that she's a certified dog and I need it, especially when I'm under stress.
It's okay.
So in the end, they just railroaded you.
Carrie had her documents ready, so then he shut up. He didn't say anything else. But
So in the end, then you got convicted of which crimes?
Yeah,
which professed crimes?
yeah, polluting waters of the United States, and we also widened out the road too.
Okay.
To our
On your own property.
Own property. Well,
Right.
it's an unpatented mining claim.
Right.
But it's surrounded by our patented property.
Right.
And we had
So
to
you
widen
improved
it out
it.
so Carrie could get she's got a big Type 2 water tender.
Right. So you could get to the
Had to
fires.
widen it. It's a big freight liner, so it holds 3,000 gallons, structure protection, foam, it's got everything on it. Had to widen that road out, so evidently that's public lands some way or other. That's the only road into our property.
There's always a narrative.
That must be, and it's also the only route for our neighbors too.
So what did they sentence you with for this crime of having a pond?
I just got 15 years in prison and 750,000 in fines.
Is that what they've convicted you of, or that's what
yeah.
they've sentenced you with? Or
That's what he can get.
that's what you can
That's
get?
that's what he said I can get.
And have they done an official sentencing yet?
The 20th of this month.
Of this month.
I still got a month and a half of freedom.
A month and a half of freedom. Well, hopefully more than that if the people will stand up. So
10 o'clock on the 20th in Missoula.
in Missoula Federal Courthouse?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So we'll spread the word on that. And this man faces 15 years in prison for a pond on his private property to protect his community, even as government violates the law, trespasses his property, and violates his rights. That's not law, that's terrorism. So we need to get focused on who the real terrorists are, and we need to stand up to that. Otherwise, it's over. You can be sentenced to death for the smallest infraction while the government gets away with murder.